This is episode 25 of That Time I Got Reincarnated in the Same World as an Anime Podcaster, where we delve into the depths of anime and manga. I'm your host, Isekai Sensei-Sama, aka Brad, and I'm joined in this Weeb Kabal by Bento Baggins, aka Ben.
Sashibori.
And Kermit D. Grog.
Hello, I am Kermit D. Grog. Copyright Grog. Copyright distinct.
Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the other series on our feed. We've got Heroin Addiction, where Ben and I explore drama and romance manhwa, and Shonen Jumping the Gun, where Kermit makes me read the first chapter of a manga in order to make completely unfounded predictions about their longevity.
Love it.
And we want to hear your opinion. You can talk to us on many different social platforms, which you can find links for in the description and on our website, animepodcasterreincarnation.com. Come hang out with us on Discord, listen to our Spotify playlist, and get episodes early by supporting us on Patreon. Don't forget to rate the podcast and tell your friends. Before we get started today, I just got, 3 news items to go over.
3.
First thing I wanted to call out, I couldn't really find a whole lot of information on this, but apparently there's a 4-part mini-series that's going to be coming out in the next couple of weeks on Uzumaki, the Junji Ito story.
The black and white one.
They're going to keep trying.
Did you hear about this, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, they've been posting clips from it for a while now.
Do you know when it's supposed to be out?
I don't know the exact date. I just know it's coming out. It's supposed to be in black and white. They're using like a weird frame rate to try to capture some of the different horror moments. So they're trying something new. It's not just another attempt. They think they've got it this time.
You gonna watch it?
I have committed to watch 1 episode.
At least.
Yep.
See what it's all about.
Report back.
There's 2 series that are going to be coming out in early January that I found, which we'll probably have another episode before then, but you know how it goes. My instant death ability is so overpowered.
I'm so rolling my eyes at that title.
It's a really interesting isekai because like the main character is like...
He's really overpowered. What a surprise. What a shakeup.
Well, no, he's sort of like the embodiment of death.
Oh?
And like in our world, the Japanese government has him hidden away in this like underground facility.
Wait, he's in actual world?
And then for whatever reason, they let him go to school. And while he's in school, like his class is taking a trip or something, and their bus gets summoned to another world. And so all his classmates become isekai protagonists, and technically he does too, but also he's the embodiment of death. And
is he a child?
A teenager, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess, yeah.
It's an interesting premise because he's trying to like train his instant death ability to the point where he can like kill specific things so he doesn't have to just murder somebody as soon as they try to attack him. And like he's able to kill inanimate objects. Like he can break a sword.
Okay.
You know, and stuff like it's weird, but it's interesting. So I think it might be worth checking out.
The isekais are mutating.
And then a one for the Otome Isekai crowd, 7th Time Loop. The villainess enjoys a carefree life. It's a pretty good series. I don't know. I like all those villainous ones. So, you know, what more is there to say about it than the title? And one more thing to cover that's not necessarily a news item. But we have some Patreon updates. Someone specific, who knows who they are, requested the theme music from the podcast. So I put up all of those, the full songs, up on the Patreon. There's a collection up there. So all our patrons can go check that out. And we want to know what people want from the Patreon. Rena had some good suggestions, but they're all things that would require more than one of our patrons to like want that. So we want to hear what other people want. A hangout stream or, Q&A episodes, Patreon exclusive Q&A episodes or something like that.
I'll also take suggestions for Shonen Jumping the Gun.
Yeah. So, even if you're not a Patreon, let us know what it would take for you to become a patron. So
we will jump through any hoops you deem required.
Easily bribable.
For your patronage. Easily bribed.
So, 25. This is our 25th episode.
We can rent a car. I guess we could already rent a car.
Yeah. So, technically, we're not quite at year 3, but this is, 2 12s.
We have to overcome a final hurdle.
I think before the next episode is out, we will be at year 3, because I believe it was like December 13th. But I thought something that was interesting is we've been discussing a lot recently, sort of like villains and anti-heroes and that kind of thing. And it got me thinking, we actually talked about this a long time ago before the podcast started. If anybody's familiar, there's some Pop Culture Talk Zone episodes out there on the feed. One of which, and it might have been the first one, is about villains and anti-heroes. And so I thought we might revisit that.
Yes, more straightforwardly, actually.
Yeah, of year 3.
Is my intention, is that I think something that makes anime and manga so special are the villains and how they are, the myriad forms they come in and how they are dealt with. So I wanted to dive into those characters, those tropes of like, what makes them work? And I feel like what we do a lot in this podcast, it's like, do we have these things in like Western media? Like, am I just not seeing the comparisons? But I want to start with, I think, a classic of manga and anime, which is the rival. Maybe villain isn't always the right word. Maybe antagonist.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a spectrum there, because you have like at the evil end of the spectrum, you have this person is doing something for their own gain that is hurting other people. And then on the opposite side, it's like, this is another good guy that for whatever reason is against our protagonist. And I think, the rival fits very neatly into there. Especially you look at someone like Bakugo from My Hero, where it's like
he's this generation's big rival.
You're a dick. What are you doing? Like, you're a hero. You save people, but also you're a dick.
But he kind of gets left in the dust. I feel like, I guess that happens with a lot of rival series I'm thinking of, where the rival's there is supposed to be the initial kind of speed bump to show like, oh, you don't have it yet. You're going to have to work harder to get at me. And at some point in a lot of series I've read, they get overcome. But they're this constant presence, I think, in a lot of really great stuff that like, hey, I'm not the bad guy. I'm not who you're going to fight at the end, but I'm constantly going to be here to make you know I'm working very hard and I got to keep you on your toes. A Vegeta, which kind of goes into another trope we'll get into later, I feel like is that to Goku. It's like, you can't rest on your laurels because I am gunning for you or your position or your spot.
Yeah, I think maybe like, I don't know. They do it in a lot of different ways, because I was thinking like Renji from Bleach, but then like, well, he started as someone who was directly opposed to Ichigo in the Soul Society arc. And so I went, well, who would work better then? Oh, how about Sasuke? But then like, he also became like a full-on antagonist. Now, granted, that was halfway through the series.
But he sits in that rival spot of he is something that he's working very hard, and he kind of, by his existence, eggs Naruto on to try harder. And again, this is maybe me spouting this, and then Ben will be like, wait a minute, no, that's present, you're just not thinking about it, which I appreciate. Like, I think the rival is a thing that's generally missing in Western media, even ones that usually try to ape, like, a shonen style. And it's one of my favorite things because it creates these interesting dynamics. Like, you can see it in video games. It's like the Virgil to Dante in, like, Devil May Cry or something. It's like, here's this other strange but kind of similar character that shows up and is like, oh man, I gotta best this guy. Like, there's just something, like, I wonder if there's some I don't know if it's from samurai stuff or some like culture specific stories or lore that makes this such a reoccurring
Well, I'll just throw this out
trope.
there. Captain America versus Iron Man. Which I think I brought up on the first episode.
But they're like both
They're not rivals.
They're not rivals. They're at loggerheads, but they're not like they're not themed around each other. They both exist on their own.
Yeah,
one
that's
was
a
not
good
created just to like egg on the other one.
Yeah.
I think the rivals, like, it comes from the cultivation genre, which is, I mean, it's not just Japanese, but it's very Asian, where Western heroes are more like Greek heroes. They're
because
just
they come
powerful.
out pre-baked in Western.
Yeah,
I mean, comics is
right.
always our go-to of these long-running characters told like one by one serially over many years.
You can't have a goalpost to sort of aim for if you are whole cloth out of the gate.
Yeah, there's no like Spider-Man has he has his set of villains, but he does not have there's no rival Spider-Man that was
Right.
made just to cause him
He
to be
He
at
doesn't
odds.
train to be Spider-Man. He just is Spider-Man.
Correct.
He gets bit by a radioactive spider, and he's Spider-Man.
And he's done. We've talked about that before. I don't know if that's its own episode of just that whole idea of just like how much the joy of the shonen for me, and I think others, is that sense of growth, and that American heroes, Western heroes, are generally just like, okay, you're ready. You had your origin story, and now you're fully equipped.
I wonder why
Nobody's
doesn't...
reaching an awakened state. Spider-Man never got awakened and then achieved new spider powers. He just has moving forward in the way that it's like, oh, Luffy figures out Gear 2 hundreds and hundreds of chapters into his series, and now he just always has that.
It's I mean, if you think about like the Miles Morales Spider-Man and like the original the first Spider-Verse movie, where it's like, well, he gets the powers right away and he has to learn how to use them,
He has
but
to
he
have
doesn't
his origin story.
but he doesn't like get stronger
He's not
in
going to.
them.
He's not going to be any stronger than what he is if he trains.
Right.
That's a difference. And again, I think it's the cultivation thing that came from Asia. It exists in the West now, but it's very much inspired by all of that. Like the whole progression genre is what it's called in the West, but it's basically cultivation from.
I wonder why
From
that
all
never...
What births the rival out of that? Is it just like, oh, you can have somebody nearby who's not a direct threat, but it is a constant impetuous to the hero to get moving, so it's like this person can be present without it being like active conflict in the moment, but it constantly reminds you of where you want to go towards.
In the West, I think the closest thing we would have is sports, where the bar keeps getting pushed. Like the home run record gets broken, and then you got to break it again.
Yeah, like that's why I think it's weird that it's not more in Western media. And maybe, again, I'm not looking in the right spots because I watch a bunch of freaking cartoons, but like it is in sports. Like it's that constant, like, people pushing the envelope, and people love that. That's a story. It's such an easy thread to pull on when it comes to an antagonist of somebody who is like you, but just a little bit further on, that constantly makes you want to reach out. Like, I know reading manga as a teenager when I was in band, and I had the one kid there was another drummer who was different than me, but he was better than me, and I was always trying to strive to kind of catch up to him and be better than him.
I don't want to go like too heady with it, but I think there's something like in the underlying, I don't know, moralities of the cultures, where it's like in the West, you have like a Christian base where you're sinners, there's outside evil, there's outside good, you look to be saved. In the East, you're living multiple lives with each iteration, you're trying to do a little better. And that the Buddhist concept of like self-improvement, self-study, always like, you're not going to get it in this life.
But we did touch on that
Most
a little
likely.
bit, where that sort of this idea of you have a power just out of the gate started with like Greek mythology.
You are complete. Now go fight evil.
And so
and Christianity got a lot of influence from Greek.
well, that's a good point.
There you go.
You don't.
Buddhism concept of reincarnation. You love that. It's in our podcast title.
Well, I was going to ask you if
that's
we're
that
talking
of iterative. Somebody's one iteration ahead of you, and you want to strive for that.
It does seem strange, though, that there's like, I mean, I'm sure it comes from, the myths and legends and literature of the various cultures, and a lot of that stems from the religions of those cultures. But it does seem strange that there's like this delineation between these two cultural pillars of the West versus the East, that in the West, the concept of instant gratification almost.
No, but I feel like I don't think, like, it's like what Ben said. A lot of these are born of, like, Greek and then Christian things, and I think that's, like, I mean, not to say that people haven't always been on instant gratification, but I don't think we can connect those things like that. I think that's just, like...
So I'm going to tie this together for you. Because I was going to ask, when you mentioned doing villains, the first thing I was going to ask was, Isekai, they often don't have a strong villain. They often have a very generic demon lord, which is based mostly on Tolkien, which is an outside evil. And the heroes in the West, like, and I hate to say the West because there's all the baggage that comes with that, but
yeah,
the those heroes, it's all about sacrifice and choice.
Yeah,
like Frodo is never going to be Deku from My Hero Academia. That's not why he's a hero. Mm-hmm. He's a hero because he sacrificed and made a choice to, like, give everything he had for other people, even if he didn't get anything in return.
Yeah. And Isekai's clean that up, so they had to not sacrifice at all because they were so powerful.
But Isekais still use the concept of, like, outside evil. Like, even Frieren. Even the demons in Frieren are just evil because they're evil. There's no complicated morality there.
Well,
I find refreshing now that everything's gotten so gray all the time.
I think that almost boils it down a little too much, and not to go into, like, heavy spoilers with Frieren.
Let's not.
But, like, that's not strictly what's going on with the demons. But for the purposes of this conversation, that's fine. It's with Isekai in general, though. I think a lot of times they sort of try and do sacrifice in this life turns into power in the next, which I think is sort of karmic. And still,
it's always karmic. That's why Truxan exists. It's that you saved somebody else from death, but you died. Ergo, you get a benefit. We are getting off the path of talking about villains right now.
Well, I think it's important to sort of figure out.
I guess you need the hero to.
Where those the power and growth structures come from to see the side by side with a rival, which a lot of times a villain is a rival just in sort of an opposite morality, as opposed to a rival you're side by side with.
I mean, that's what I think the true rival than a villain or an antagonist.
Yeah.
But I feel like you could also get one I wanted to really bring up with this, which I don't think either of you have read Hunter x Hunter much. But Hisoka, the clown guy, is sort of this Gon, the main character's rival throughout all of Hunter x Hunter. But he is also like an actual bad guy who just happens to be in the same Hunter Society, who's like doing all this stuff, but he is always seemingly steps ahead of Gon, so he constantly is this, like, it's a measuring stick. It's this constantly present measuring stick. Sometimes they're a lot nicer nearby. Also, sometimes it depends on the stakes of the world. Sometimes you get, like, when I read, like, Daigo Fire Company M, there's, like, his rival is, like, this guy that's on the, like, rescue squad, that he's constantly like, I need to be better than that guy. I don't even care those dumb orange jacketed rescue guys, but I need to be, even as a firefighter, I need to be better than that jerk. And that is what drives him forward to be better. A singular person, a thing that has a face that you can have feelings about, that drives our heroes forward. So some of this I also want to do is, like, how do you feel about rivals? Like, I clearly, like, I like them a lot. I wish they were present more things. I'm somebody who pushes themselves really hard, and having somebody else who is like, oh, you're better than me at this drives me forward. If you can have that sort of weird camaraderie that you are egging each other on.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm, like, particularly enamored with anything like that. I like the variety of different stories, and so, like, if everything's got a rival, it's like, well, this is the same thing again. But there's definitely, I think it's a good literary device in a lot of situations. And especially just overall, the idea of having a story that is about someone's growth in some way, whether they're shooting for a specific goal or just general growth, having a goalpost in the form of someone you're alongside of, be that a villain or a rival.
Having a goalpost that is not the end. Like,
Right.
it is very specifically outside of the, not necessarily outside, but like generally like not on the plotted course of where we are headed.
Which I guess is sort of a difference between a rival and a villain a lot of times.
Yeah.
There's
'Cause
plenty
it's like
of villains.
someday Luffy's going to fight Cody or whatever the heck his name. Kobe. And like, is it going to be important to the story? No. But am I really interested in it happening? Yes, because it's been built up all this time. We've seen both of their growth. One of them kind of outclasses the other, but that's not what it's about. It's kind of the other way around. Luffy is kind of Kobe's rival.
Yeah.
In a weird way. Luffy just happens to be the main character.
No,
But
Luffy's the
villain. There's a lot of
Gojo's
people
the
you could
villain.
describe as rivals in One Piece.
I wanted to bring that up because Gojo is in this weird state where it's like, oh, he's their mentor, but also like he sort of just does whatever he wants.
He's
and
like
it just,
outside all bounds of everything.
yeah, it just so happens that his goals are sort of noble in a way, but it's not because he's a noble person.
Jujutsu Kaisen doesn't really have a rival, does it?
No, because with Fushiguro versus Itadori, it's like
Yeah, it's not.
they're not really on the same level and they're not really on the same trajectory.
Well,
Yeah.
it uses Sukuna and Gojo to set the bars
Right.
of what Jujutsu is capable of, and they're so far above initially that it doesn't matter. But
I guess that's the thing. You don't need a rival when you constantly have Gojo.
But Gojo is also kind of
Sorcerer
like a
Jesus around, showing you are this tiny insignificant ant.
But
as
Gojo's
he
like
improves.
kind of a. So there was a video essay I saw by a guy who was a screenwriter who was talking about how the big difference between like a Gojo and a Kakashi is
Kakashi.
Kakashi, yeah. Kakashi.
Sorry, I genuinely wasn't sure if you were talking about somebody else because I don't know who else would have been. But
No.
you're good. Keep going.
But like the difference between them is like Kakashi is good essentially, and Gojo
It's bad.
kind
Morally
of
ambiguous at best.
Yeah.
kind of a sadist. Like he enjoys just torturing and playing with curses.
Yeah.
He just likes fucking with people in general because he can.
Yeah. I mean, everything about him makes him seem unhinged and untrustworthy, and like all that power concentrated in one person. It's cool while he's making choices we like,
Yeah.
Right.
and then one day he won't.
And then one day he buys Twitter. No,
Kinda.
that's a lie. A bunch of people had very good reasons to not like him before he bought that. But no, that's a good point. But I guess that here. Well, let's go to my next sort of villain type, and at some point we'll end up at actual like villain enemy villain, which is a trope that I see a lot in manga as well, which is villain that then joins the party. I feel like Dragon Ball is like the classic version of that. I'm sure it happened before. Sakamoto Days is a very recent version of that, and I feel like it's just the artist created characters they liked, and after they fought them, are like, this character's too cool, they need to stick around, and then they just sort of join the entourage.
Yeah, I feel like that's happening more and more
Kill Blue's doing
as
it.
time goes by. Everybody,
I feel like it's coming back in style.
I think it probably started like with Dragon Ball. I think back then this thing happened where the author is like, I spent a whole lot of time making this cool character. I'm not just going to throw them away. But it seems to have evolved into a very specific device to sort of transform a villain to a rival, if that makes sense. It's like a bridge between the sort of the extremes of
I guess
that spectrum.
Sometimes they just become like buddies. Like Yamcha, I guess in the beginning Yamcha is kind of a rival before Goku's gotten too strong, but it's like that's the thing with him. It's like Goku's always the strongest anybody that comes in. But then I guess it's like a leveling up, but they all join the team.
Yeah.
First it's Yamcha, later on it's Tien, and then you get Vegeta, and then it's Vegeta. Like after Vegeta comes in, the party is set.
Justice for
I'm
Piccolo.
so sorry. I shouldn't disrespect Piccolo. I love He's my favorite. Everybody listening, I'm genuinely sorry. I'm sorry, Piccolo, a character who's not real, doesn't exist, and doesn't have feelings, but genuinely, like, I can't believe I just disrespected Piccolo like that. He's my favorite. I feel dirty. Genuinely. Also Piccolo. But once Vegeta came, it ended. There's nobody else has meaningfully joined. No, I lied, because you get Whis and Beerus.
Well, and Frieza now.
And Frieza now. He came back around. There's a villain.
Broly. Yeah.
Broly's now there.
Boo, yeah. No, like...
Everybody liked him too much. You just make him, maybe not a hero, but you just have him join the hero team.
There's only two options for villains in Dragon Ball. They either die or become a friend, or they die and then become a friend.
People confer. You know who never comes back, though? Goku's brother Raditz. Dead forever. Nappa dead. Cell dead.
A bridge.
They weren't popular.
Nappa back.
No. Cell was great, though. I thought people liked. I guess it's like what do you... No, well, Cell didn't come back. The androids came back.
Is
Jiren dead? I don't know what happened to Jiren. I just know that you're supposed to leave him to me.
I think he's still around.
He's still around, yeah.
There's an interesting one you pointed out there, because a lot of times it's like, oh, they were a villain, now they're a rival. Android 18, that's a bit different.
I don't know what happened with the androids then later. I just know they're back.
Android 18 married Krillin.
I know that. Oh, that's what you mean. Sorry, I never remember which one's the brother and which one's the sister, because I know the brother is back and fighting now.
17's the brother.
But yeah, it's like, these are characters they spent a long time designing that we've spent a lot of time with, and to just throw them away would be silly. But it's so interesting that they become good guys. They joined the good team. I guess that's what I've been continually going with. They're not just like, because I feel like so many other times with like when we go to like superhero comic stuff, it's like they join. It's it's your rival of villain. You're not rival. Shoot. Why can't I think of the word of like when they describe Batman's set of villains? They always
cadre.
What?
No, it's your villains gallery.
Yeah, there you
Rogues
go.
gallery.
Not
Rogues gallery.
Cadre is.
What? No, but Rogues gallery was the thing they always say with that. Like, the Joker came back and is in that set, and if they're lame, they don't come back into rotation. But I guess that's also just the way that superhero comics exist with these characters, is that even though they're long running, there's not singular continuity.
A cadre is a small group of people specially trained for a particular purpose
Brad,
or profession.
I know. I'm not saying your word was the wrongest. It just wasn't what I was looking for. I wanted a hammer, and you handed me a screwdriver, which I could use as a hammer, but I wanted an actual hammer.
That's a good word.
It's a good word. You know me, I love having words for groups of people. That's why we're the Weeb Cabal.
Cadre is adjacent to Cabal.
Cabal. Less evil, I would say.
Maybe.
Kabal I always think is very evil, but that might just because the Mortal Kombat character named Kabal is like a weird blade man. But no, like, I'm trying to think of like other things that do that in that, because it's only certain series will do the like, oh, well, I've made this weird wacky character, now they're going to stick around.
It's obviously popular because there's a whole bunch of series that do it, and they are very long-running series. The Naruto and Bleach and Dragon Ball and like all these recent ones with, like you said, Sakamoto Days and Kill Blue. Like, it's a thing that happens a whole lot. So it's obviously a popular trope.
Because those characters are popular.
And is that what?
I think it's the thing. Like, comics could kind of have that, and I think that's why we can see it mimicked in like superheroes and Western comics. But it's like you're putting out a chapter a week,
right?
So maybe there's a backlog of 2 or 3 chapters, maybe with the releases. I don't know, especially how it was then and how it is now. I have no idea. But like, you can hear buzz, however many chapters it takes to fight this character, you can hear buzz of like, oh, people like this character. I'll keep them around, or people aren't feeling strong about this one. And dead. Like, you don't usually have that immediacy as a story in flight and still moving. It's not like, oh, a movie went by, a season of television went by, that we can like move things around so minutely that we can just go, yeah, let's keep them around. Like usually it's like with the TV thing like that turnaround time is a lot slower. It's like everybody loved Loki, but it took a while for that to like, that he kept getting brought back because it was a movie, and that takes time, and not like a chapter of manga, which takes around a week.
Yeah.
Well,
And
I think
because you have
the
to
thing is,
constantly
like,
keep presenting new struggles to overcome, you're constantly creating new interesting characters that you want. They're like, well, no, there's too cool. Come back. Like One Piece did that well, but they don't join the party. They're no longer problems, but they join the world. And are now just like, I've been defeated, but I'm still present. I'm still here. Wapol now has his own little, capitalist kingdom. Eneru's going to the moon. Don Krieg, who cares? There's others I can't think of off the top of the dome right now. But like, freaking all of CP9, because I just read Water 7 again. Like, these things come back around. These characters are popular enough. And especially shonen stuff, especially for battlers, is very character focused. So it makes sense that, I think for that they come back in a way that a lot of other media doesn't do that. Nothing? No strong thoughts?
I guess Ben didn't have anything to say. You started to say something.
I was just going to say that, like, the villain is usually the more interesting character than the hero. Like, the villain gets the best song. The villain has the motivation. Like, the hero's there to, like, keep the status quo a lot of the time. Like, sometimes they have a goal, but, like, the villain usually is, like, more free, more energetic, more, like, wacky and out there. And so when they become a hero... What's that?
What's a villain that's like that doesn't become a hero? Because that's what I want to. I want to move into our final little bit of this, at least for now, is like an actual villain.
Well, I was just thinking, like,
they don't join the party team for the most part.
I think that Ben, I think that's probably exactly right, because I immediately thought of this analogy. The protagonist is the vehicle and the villain is the scenery.
Well, we talked about that. I mean, go back and listen to that Pop Culture Talk Zone. I think it's really good, and I was almost about to do a panel on it. It was so good. It's the idea that the villain is allowed to make mistakes. That's why when the villain joins the hero team, the anti-hero with stuff like that, we are more understanding and forgiving. When Goku screws up, everybody hates him. But when Vegeta screws up, you go, it's Vegeta. Or Bakugo shows up, it goes, oh, wait a minute, they don't, because there's that one time he told Deku to kill himself, and nobody can forget about that. But outside of that, I mean, he wasn't a space terrorist, so I think people's leeway. He's just a school child, so,
He didn't get a pass.
He didn't get a pass because he was never an actual villain. He's just an asshole. But like we talked about that then. I think that's still true now. So it's what are the great like villains in anime? Because I feel like that are not the rival that didn't join the hero team. Because I feel like so much, if they don't do that, they are then dealt with and they're a speed bump and you move beyond them and you're not thinking about them anymore.
I don't know that anime, I mean, if we're focusing in on shonen especially, I don't know that it has a lot of those, because the point for a shonen protagonist is not to beat the villain, because there's always going to be another villain. The point is to better themselves.
Right.
Exactly. And that's kind of my point. Like, there can be an ending big bad, and sometimes they get dealt with, and you're like, what? I remember that when that happened in My Hero Academia, that like, oh, there's been all this talk about All for One. He's gonna be the end of the series guy. And then like, what, not even now halfway through looking at it, he gets bopped, and you're just like, and now obviously other things have happened. But it's like, they have to...
That was all part of Keikaku.
Yes. Okay, all according to Keikaku. They have to dangle. It's like, hey, you're going to deal with other guys, but here, this guy is the guy. Outside of all of the arcs, whatever arcs you're going on, here's the dangle guy. Here is All for One. Here is Orochimaru. Here is... Except then he gets bopped, and they have to make another one. Like, You have to keep making bigger and bigger people to deal with.
I think it does. A lot of it comes down to, taking a journey with the protagonist. Because I'm thinking about, you mentioned the Isekai stuff before and like the Demon Lord and stuff, but like that's sort of like the classic Isekai thing where it's like, oh, hero summoned to another world to defeat the Demon Lord. That's not really what Isekai does these days. Sometimes there is a big bad threat like a Demon Lord that's out there, but in most cases, the protagonist that gets isekai'd is given a bunch of power, and then there's just things around in the world for them to deal with. And so they'll travel from place to place and showcase their abilities. And it's all more of a journeying. And in lots of ways, it's not a journey of growth like in a lot of the shonen stuff, but it's still a journey of exploration. Of, hey, this is this new world. Like, what's going on in this world?
Yeah, they're almost vestigially in those things.
I think it goes back to though, like if you're looking for like an equivalent of Batman and the Joker in anime, part of the reason it's not there is because it's not a good versus evil story.
But there is. I was looking around at my walls to go, there's got to be something I've watched that has it, and the first one I wanted to talk about with that, just because it's directly to my right, was Golden Kamuy, which kind of fits that, where they're dealing with weirdos of the week, but they're also constantly, the various like factions are constantly butting heads, and I'm thinking of like the main villain who's ahead of the like military faction, who is that thing, Ben, that you talked about, that villain, I wish I could remember his name, but it's been a hot second since I've touched Golden Kamuy at this moment, who can be more unhinged, and that's like the joy of it. And I'm going to roll that into like all of the main JoJo villains, your Dio, your Kira, your
Dio
Father
might be as
Pucci
close
to
as
a
it
second.
gets.
What?
Dio is pretty close to what you're looking for.
Like, Dio is that, and I don't think, and like, this is my problem. Hey, listener, write in with your favorite anime villains that don't just join the party or are the rival. Like, Dio is the guy everybody knows because he's this crazy, like, I mean, he's very... JoJo's very, like, that is a good versus evil story.
You know
what?
what?
It was explicit. That's what Araki said what he was doing when he wrote that.
Now that I'm thinking about it, I think Stardust Crusaders is like an isekai story.
What?
Not in a very
so
strict
surprised
sense
by this.
but like no, I mean the tropes that it has, not the sort of accoutrement. Because
teenager gets incredible powers, more OP than everybody else's powers.
yeah. And then there's a guy who's over here and he stays there and he's more powerful than everybody else. And we have to journey to him and beat him.
But what makes it cooler is that his wait, I got to get this right. His great grandfather fought him? No. Jonathan is Joseph's dad, or I'm getting messed up.
Great grandfather, because
Yes.
Great grandfather.
Because Joseph,
No.
because
Great.
Jotaro is Joseph's grandson.
yeah,
So Joseph
is
is
the son
Jotaro's
of Jonathan.
grandfather, which makes Jonathan his great grandfather.
Yeah.
Family
Great,
tree
great,
stuff.
isn't it? No, it's great because there's
Is there somebody between Jonathan and
Joestar,
Joseph?
the guy in between Joseph. There was like a Georgie Joestar.
Oh yeah, you're right. So there's like a George or something.
George is
Yeah.
Jonathan's dad.
Yeah. No.
I think there's another one in the middle because there's like the top.
Oh, that's right, because what's her name is Joseph's mom.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Haman lady. Anyway,
So it would only be Josuke's grandfather.
each part of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is like a different kind of story.
But the villains are like, I feel like when I'm thinking about villains, they're the standout because they are the problem creating so many of the struggles for the protagonist throughout the
Yeah.
entire thing, and then they fight at the end and they deal with it, and then
Because-
the part is over. Like, I know Dio comes back, but like 1 is a complete part, 2 is a complete part.
Yeah.
Like they're so different than, even though it's technically long running and there's a lot of concepts and even sometimes characters that follow through, it allows them to go, here is the big bad of the series. We have to constantly butt heads, and then we defeat them and move on. And anime, usually it's like, because they have to keep moving, those villains become speed bumps and you move on. But because you get when you have good and evil, when you can get Dio just chewing the scene and kicking dogs and putting them into furnaces and drinking people and just fucking with Jonathan and kissing his girlfriend just because he can. And sticking his finger up his nose or whatever that scene was. I don't remember. I only remember the meme version that I have an image of.
I think there's a...
I think they're different. I think the JoJo villains are outliers that are more akin to like the classic villains we think about, like a Joker or like a freaking Hannibal Lecter or something.
But you touched on something, I think, and this is sort of like an overall villains in general kind of thing, is that you have to have a villain or something akin to a villain, or else you just have a slice of life story.
Yeah, well, yeah, because a villain can create challenges, conflict. But so many, like in Western stuff, is like they are the conflict at the end. They're not just one amongst a series of conflicts, unless it's like, oh, we've made another chapter or part of this, but maybe they'll come back. You know. I've lost my train of thought.
It's so interesting, though.
But like, it's this people. One of the first thoughts I had when I thought of this idea is that thing with like, who are the Punisher's rivals? I don't know. Or his rogues gallery. I don't know. They're dead.
Yeah.
Like, the Punisher is living the anime manga lifestyle. Oh, what's your villain? Speed bumps. I kill them. I take them out.
I think that's why at some point they were like, yeah, Batman doesn't kill. Because like, if Batman killed, we'd run out of villains.
They keep writing Punisher stuff. He keeps killing people.
But all the Punisher villains are like mafia and like gangs and stuff.
He technically has a couple that will like show back up within other tellings of it, like a Bullseye or what's his name? He's got like a weird organic penis.
But Bullseye is a Daredevil villain.
He shows up.
So the
Punisher. I don't know what to tell you.
The Punisher is a Daredevil villain. I mean, also the Punisher, that's the difference.
The Punisher is an anti-hero, which makes sense. That's why he kills people.
He has to borrow villains from other heroes.
Yeah, and then he can't
because he's killed all of his own.
Like, Light Yagami in Death Note is the villain, and the police are his antagonists.
I just want to say in this moment, to quote a thing, is that Punisher is the biggest fan of Death Note.
Yeah, it's like, oh, if I had that, it'd be so much easier.
Yeah.
Hey,
he wouldn't use it, though.
What's your name?
He'd still write down Punisher shoots this guy.
Yeah.
So he could still do it himself.
Yeah.
I've guaranteed that it'll happen.
Giant freaking Shinigami. Is there a K in there somewhere? Shinigami poster right on the wall. Freaking loves Death Note.
What is Shikigami? Isn't that a thing?
That's something else, I think. But I know what you're talking about.
Shikigami is a different thing.
Yeah.
Shinigami is the Grim Reaper.
Shin Megami Tensei. I'm going to jump to Persona. Persona has a series of villains that you just overcome and that I don't think about anymore. They're mostly just a boss fight can be a pain, and that's why I remember them. Like, they're not as... Jokers in anime and manga are less around unless they become a hero, unless they join the hero team. They get moved on from.
But to have a Joker, you need to have a Batman.
Yeah, but you can have... I would call... Or like I would call Goku a Superman, but it's like every time he beats up Superman villains that I don't know very well, they just join the Justice League. What if the Justice League were all the people that Superman beat up? That's Dragon Ball.
The problem is Goku doesn't really give a fuck about justice or anything. Like the Joker's whole thing is chaos, but like Goku's a little chaotic himself. Like, as long as the Joker's giving him a good fight, Goku's not going to kill him no matter how many people the Joker kills. And that's his reason for not killing him.
Maybe that's though. It's generally not a fight about good and evil. It isn't JoJo, and that's why JoJo's villains stand out more to us.
There is a thing that happens though in Western superhero stories where the hero has to team up with their villain.
Yeah, I think that happened later because they kept coming around and they're popular because of. Hi, again, listen to our Pop Culture Talk Zone episode. I'll probably do that then after recording this.
But they do it differently because whenever there's like a team up of like the villain and the hero in like Western comics or whatever, it's only for a specific time because there's a greater threat that they have to go against.
It's strange bedfellows.
Right. And then when it's over, they go back to fighting each other. There's never a like, oh, I'm actually good now kind of thing.
Has that happened in... Like, kind of, but never, like, full-on villains. Like, I can think of, like, One Piece moments where, like, some of the worst generation has to team up by virtue of there being, like, an even bigger bad. But it's never, like, oh, never like two people who are generally at odds have to team up to do it. Maybe that's just I don't remember very well, or I haven't read the thing that does that. But like you're right, that's not really a thing that happens as much.
Well, it happens, but this is the dark side. I mean, this is part of the reason why I like manga and I started to choose manga over Western comics is because if you read Western comics, like if you read Batman today and you read Batman 50 years from now, he's still going to be fighting the Joker. And that does eventually get old. But one of the things that attracted me to manga was it's not this big thing owned by a corporation that hires staff writers to fill it out. It's one guy's story and things move on. So like the consequence of Goku and Piccolo teaming up to beat Raditz is they have now worked together at least once before. And it complicates their relationship.
Oh my gosh, you're right. And Raditz is dead forever. Sometimes that's not true, but more times than Western comics, characters are dead and gone.
And we have to reset the universe to bring them back.
Yeah. Or something where we have to deal with that. You can't... There was a death of Superman. He got better.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no, I can't. Every X-Men has been dead I don't know how many times.
Yeah.
I used to be a huge
Maybe that's
X-Men
what makes
fan.
the villain thing, is because there is a fight. They have to be dealt with, or they join polite society. Assimilate or die.
Well, it has to end
Shonen
at some
protagonist chief gentrifiers.
point. We gentrify evil. No, but yeah, they don't. I don't know. They the thing I like about manga is that it tends to end.
Yeah, but that makes it interesting that villains, and like I said, let's like there's not like you don't see a bunch of them on shirts in the way that you see like a Joker or all the like our horror villains or something.
That's because they're people, not archetypes. Like the Joker is always going to be the Joker. He's never going to change. He's not a person.
And a villain can be interesting, but not that you'd put them. An anime villain would put them on a shirt, like a villain that ended up being not a villain but was a villain and was the thing that everybody said was great, and then it was great. Was the Chimera Ant arc in Hunter x Hunter? And there's like the main guy who was the king, who like was the most freaking compelling villain I've ever seen, and then he just kind of deals with himself or whatever. But like he's not somebody that like everybody's clamoring for this. Like it's not very. Anime villains, because they are dealt with, are not very like long-term like capitalism characters. People don't like, the masses do not clamor for them. Nobody's talking about like Zabuza and Haku anymore unless they're freaking old like me and have nostalgia, or as I've recently learned to turn it, it was part of my backstory. Instead of saying nostalgia, you say backstory, and it makes it have such a different vibe. So I'm playing around with that because I saw that in my backstory. I have a connection to it, but by and large, we've moved on from it.
I feel like Hot Topic will still sell like a Ryuk t-shirt or a Death Note t-shirt.
Yeah.
But those, again, like the Dios, the Death Notes, they start to get into...
The Dio is the guy you will see on the shirts, though, because he is a classic... Like, not even just because he shows up twice, but like he is the classic villain in our Western good versus evil thing that gets to chew the scenery and be awful and then just... And is unrepentantly a dick, and then he dies, and then he comes back and dies again.
Yeah, but and the thing with JoJo is like JoJo started out as inspired by like Western stories and Western music.
Exactly.
And Death Note, even though it is featuring Shinigami and stuff, they still have the, forbidden fruit apple in all the art and stuff.
Yeah.
Ryuk loves apples, and the Death Note is written in English. And there's still a lot of Western influence in that. Like the good versus evil story, I think, comes from the morality of the West, where like, even if you're not a super religious person, you're just raised in this, there is a God, there is a devil, they compete for your soul.
Yeah. I think, that's what I'm thinking of. So I was trying to think with One Piece, and it's like Blackbeard's kind of the bad guy that I feel like it's building up towards, but I don't think anybody's super jazzed about, like, he's cool and I'm excited for that fight, but like he's not like, man, I want to wear a Blackbeard shirt. Like, people aren't making memes with him.
He's more mystery than sort of like scenery.
Yeah, he doesn't. You don't see him chewing this. Like, he is not creating a lot of conflict that much for Luffy and the crew directly.
Yeah,
but he will be like, you can see as a story, he'll be a problem. I think the closest we get to that, I could see like edgy teens on the internet and young people like writing on their whatever live journals are now think about it is like the villain squad from My Hero Academia. But that's like the one main thing I can think of. Where, like, here's a bunch of villains. Like, they are reoccurring. They keep showing up through all of the arcs.
I think,
they kind of change, but not a ton.
Ben, I think something you said sort of brings this full circle to me. And that is when we talk about these differences between West versus East in terms of, conflict drivers. In the West, you have the good versus evil, and in the East, it's more growth-centered. And I feel like perhaps, people in our generation and the newer generations are gravitating a lot towards those Eastern-centric stories is because we're rejecting the notion that everything is just black and white, good versus evil.
Progression works better when you know the world is gray.
Yeah.
I'm biased, but that's part of the reason I'm attracted to it. It's part of the reason I learned Japanese. I got half a dozen books on Buddhism on my shelf. Like,
yeah,
I can say I gravitate towards it. And I've left American comics basically, like, I've left American superhero comics almost entirely behind.
And maybe that means, like, even the popularity of a lot of sort of newer Western villains, when you think about, a Thanos in Infinity War and stuff, and how people are really attracted to that. Maybe a lot of that has to do with the rejection of the black and white and sort of saying, like, he's doing something bad, but his reasons aren't entirely wrong.
We're out of time to fully get into this, but my counterpoint to that is, and I have talked about it on this podcast many times, is that when things are always gray, if media can be escapism for you, sometimes media that is black and white can be very satisfying.
Yeah.
I still love Lord of the Rings.
When you make it black and white, when you have a Dio who's just so unrepentantly a monster, when he is finally vanquished, the pursuit of vanquishing him is satisfying. But that's also what makes him memorable. This is why, like, the one I always go to as a recent example of a movie that can do a lot of great things in it was Puss in Boots' Last Witch, where, what's his name? The plum guy.
Jack Horner.
Jack Horner is just literally looks at the camera and goes, I'm an unrepentant bad guy with no redeeming qualities. And you know what? Having him be beaten is really satisfying because I don't get that in life. Things like that is my final thing as we tie this knot, is that I think in general for long running things that grayness and progression I think is more compelling. But every so often, because we know now this generation and the next one that the world is not black and white, getting a little taste of it that fits our particular sensibilities is a nice, refreshing little piece of candy. That's my take on villains.
I think
that's what creates the most memorable villains, is the ones that can be so unrepentantly awful.
For my perspective, I have to say that the variety of villains is very important. If everything was the black and white villain, or if everything was the gray villain, I would get exhausted with one or the other.
Yep.
Having the mix is
that's why with the black
important.
and white. Everybody's been gray recently because everybody's getting smarter and more empathetic, which is good. Just the pendulum swings back.
And let's throw in those Jack Horners every once in a while, and
give me a Dio every while. Have somebody chew the scenery. Make them awful. Ben, you got any closing remarks?
Final thoughts.
Oh, yeah. I mean, sometimes it's good to just be able to hate something and kill it, I guess. Yeah, with no consequences.
Sometimes you just want to punch a celestial dragon.
You just want a solvable problem.
Do both.
Solve it with my fist.
Give me a gray villain, and then give me a black and white villain.
In the same series?
Yeah.
That's the same world.
I know I didn't want in the same world. I know I didn't want to get distracted because we're done with this segment, but like that's what the Puss in Boots Last Wish. He has a very gray villain he has to deal with on top of Jack Horner and One Piece. every new chapter, Otis is like, hey, if you didn't think the world government and specifically the celestial dragons were the most effed up people ever that you should hate, let me give you 7 new giant reasons that why they are just the worst.
Well,
Villains.
to wrap this up, we'll say, jump on our Discord and give us
Tell us your favorite anime and manga villains. Tell us why you love them, why you remember them, why they resonate with you, why you hate them.
Tell me what you think about religion.
Cadre. So I gotta say, I've been very happy recently because our community's growing and we actually have people on our Discord talking about stuff.
Yeah.
Shout out to everybody on there. Most of them are our patrons, so they'll get specific shout outs later. But I just wanted...
You don't need to be a patron to be on the Discord, just to be clear.
But something that I was so happy about was we have actual discussions going on and topic suggestions. And so something that got brought up recently, through very organic means, mind you, was talking about how big spoiler culture has gotten recently. And so we have a couple different angles on this. One that I wanted to start with that Ben and I have started becoming very familiar with is the spoiler culture in the Otome Isekai community, which is like starkly different from spoiler culture sort of in general, where you might have people who like throw out spoilers to troll people. And we'll get to that because there's a problem that's happening.
Yeah, there's many
in
different.
That space.
I'll approach also some more, maybe not positive, but less villainous.
But I wanted to touch on this because it's so fascinating to me. Most of what I'm seeing in this is sort of in comments and like on the Otome Isekai Discord and the subreddit, where you have most of the community that actually seeks out spoilers. And a lot of it centers around wanting to know if they should keep reading the series. Because a lot of times what will happen is you'll start reading one of these Otome Isekais, and in the first 20 chapters or whatever, it's like, oh, this is pretty compelling. But time and again, and this is not something that I've run into because I read everything to completion, but a lot of these fans of Otome Isekai will get to the end of the story and be very disappointed in how it goes, whether that's like the person who becomes the male lead or the way they wrap up the main conflict of the series or whatever that is. And so now within, 20 chapters or so, you go in the comments and you have all these people like, is he the male lead? Is that who she's going to get together with at the end? Is that person, the central villain of the plot? And
will I be disappointed?
Yeah. Everybody wants to know like what's going to happen. And it's so interesting to me because I'm doing it too. Now,
why are you doing it then, Mr.
For me,
to completion?
So here's the thing. It's like, I don't actually want to know the spoilers, but there's something compelling about going, what's the trajectory on this? And what I find is that actually knowing what's going to happen doesn't spoil the journey. Like just knowing like, oh, this particular person is the male lead doesn't change the fact that I like to watch their relationship grow, It is
truly about the journey over the destination.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And I was going to say, this was kind of my hot take on spoilers is like, I guess as somebody who spends most of their free time analyzing books and comics and stuff, most stories just aren't original enough for me to care about spoilers. Like
that's a good point.
There's like obviously I don't want like an Agatha Christie novel spoiled because solving it is the point of reading it. But not every story is structured like that. With a lot of Otome Isekai, and I was joking about this in the Discord, is you could tell by the hair color who's winding up with who.
Right.
And it's very tropey, but that's the fun of it. You want to see that same thing play out again and again.
But do you not want to have like a surprise where it's set up one way to lead you, like it's a red herring to lead you off? Would you not? Isn't that part of the joy of these things to not see them coming?
That hardly ever happens, to be perfectly honest.
There is something for me where, because of how much I read, a lot of times when I read a spoiler that's, you know, something that will happen in 50 chapters, by the time I get there in 3, 6, 8 months or whatever it is, I have completely forgotten what that spoiler is in the first place.
Yeah.
See, like my thing is like, there's degrees of spoilers, like,
yeah.
And the one thing I'll say, like, cultural speaking, I think my attitude towards spoilers, they don't bother me very much. Like, I can go into a story knowing everything that's going to happen and still enjoy it most of the time.
Right.
There are some times, like, it's very rare where a story catches me so off guard, and being caught off guard was, like, necessary to heighten the emotional impact. In that case, I would not want somebody to give me spoilers. And I think it's important to be respectful of people who don't want spoilers.
Yes.
If they, even though I disagree, like that spoilers would ruin this, if they don't want them, don't
I don't think
force it
ruin
on
is always the word, but like it can take some of the extra joy and magic out of it. Yeah. That you might have experienced that you will now rob from somebody else. But also, we also live in a world, like, I always think about, like, we grew up just existing in a world that it's like, we knew that Vader was Luke's father. That was just a tautology of the universe. There was no way for us to make it to an age to meaningfully watch that and be surprised by that. So we have just accepted that as a thing. And I feel like there's a lot of long-running series that certain things have come out that we don't even think to be surprised by things because we already know what's going to happen even if we haven't seen it.
There's definitely something there.
But I think there's something when you're in that moment to have that discovery feeling, that joy. There's a big example I'm going to talk about a little bit later, which I guess in itself is somewhat of a spoiler, but I feel like the internet's leaking all over the place about it, so I feel okay to talk about it. But like the joy of experiencing those, like, oh, I didn't know this happened. In the moment, it's that joy of keeping up with something chapter by chapter. There's no way I can hear murmurs about it. It happened in real time for me.
I will say, I'm not sure where my whole feelings on spoilers came from, but I do want to point out that I first saw Star Wars when I was like 6 or 7, and I did not know.
But was that reveal meaningful to you then?
I can't really remember.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. That's important. But like the way that I experience I'm basically on the same route that Ben is with this, where it's like,
I'm glad I'm here to be a counterpoint.
I've never experienced a spoiler and been like, oh no, now what? I didn't want to know that.
No, yeah, but that's being like such a pissy baby about like, I don't know. I think there's like a magic to discovery of things that when it's taken from you, it's why when there's like something I'm interested in and people try to describe like, oh, this is what happens the first 10 minutes. It's like, I do not want to know. I want to go in with my own clean slate to experience this, and knowing things dirties my slate because it gives me information that I would not have otherwise. It's why it's like, it's the thing with like a long running series. It's just, there are certain things you're going to osmosis. So it's like, well, I know this guy's important because people are still drawing art of him that I see online. I don't seek this stuff out. Yeah. I've just osmosis this. This is the joy I have of keeping up with things as they come out because it is hitting me as soon as it happens. I have no means, even if it's not necessarily spoilering, I can't osmosis anything. I get to go in with my own clean slate, and it's not like, wow, this is the most amazing thing in the world, and if I didn't experience like that, it would be like garbage. But I think there's something special to that. There's something meaningful to go in of your own volition, to not go, well, I know this guy has to live because he's in all the other art for later things or something like that. Like, when it's the beginning. I got to experience that with my freaking... Or I'll shut up for a second. Ben, you wanted to cut it. You say something. I'm apologizing.
Well, I was gonna say there's like an etiquette to it. Like, even though that's my personal philosophy, like, I think it's still rude to, in the comments of the first chapter of a manhwa, reveal everything that happens because you read the novel.
Yes, I would say that's very rude.
And I think there's a second thing I wanted to bring up, just like etiquette wise, is because I'm also big in the horror community. Content warnings. There's a whole thing in the horror community about people who don't want spoilers and people who don't want to have like serious mental health crises.
Yeah, exactly.
And the best way I've seen to do this is, I don't know how well it works in like webcomics, but like what they've started doing in horror novels is front page, it says turn to the back for content warnings.
Yeah, you need to have it like, you need like spoiler text content warning. So it's like,
there's sort of a thing with like a lot of like the manhwa and stuff where when you view the first page, they put tags in for like, what is it, drama, is it romance, whatever. And a lot of times it'll have like, you know, a tag that's like sexual exploitation or, you know, whatever.
Yeah, I'm always caught in the middle of that because like I think people should know, but also it can take that surprise or of what something is away from you as like, I wasn't expecting this to be this.
Yeah, I like the solution of hiding it, because I do understand that content warnings can be spoilers.
Placing it somewhere clearly, but hiding, like you have to make an effort to, like a small effort to go see it.
Well, and there's the like this etiquette thing with, and this sort of will start going into the second part of this. So in the Otome Isekai community, basically everybody, and they do police this to an extent, everybody will put spoiler tags on the spoilers. So you have to specifically click on it.
So people are generally good about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
The thing that I found is that everybody clicks on it. It's here's some hidden knowledge. I need to see what it is.
Yep.
So that's my second point, is like, it's rude to just throw it out there where somebody wouldn't think it would be. But at the same time, if you're going to listen to a podcast on the latest episode of One Piece and then be mad that they spoiled the episode, come on, man. Like, some of this is judgment.
You're getting into the third part of this discussion, which is how we talk about spoilers on our own show.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the etiquette of it, because I think the big problem that we're having sort of in general media consumption is people throwing out spoilers to be dicks about it.
Be dicks, or to just they're not thinking about other people.
No, specifically to be dicks.
Okay,
so
I don't interface with these humans because I have my own little corner that I talk about these things on.
The Darth Vader is Luke's father is a big one, but the one that I specifically remember is like, oh, these people are being malicious about this.
Snape kills Dumbledore.
Yeah, where they would drive past the line of people lined up at the bookstore. The bookstore. This was the books, not the movies. And would drive past
to get this information,
right, and yell out of the car, "Snape kills Dumbledore!" And it's like, what is wrong with you people? Like,
there's a situation that was going on with the Jujutsu Kaisen stuff, because I know that's been making the rounds
and that's
a lot.
Part of it is like I'm pretty sure there's a good amount of people who are literally just like, this is a huge thing I want to talk about.
Yes, I've got an example of that I want to talk about.
It's just sort of spread, but there's a contingent of people who are just going, hey, I have this information about this series they probably don't even watch, but this will hurt someone if they learn it. I am going to go and seek out I'm going to cause pain someone.
With this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate those people.
Those people suck.
Well,
like,
I would use that as like as a lever for my own thing of why you two are like not laissez-faire, but like that you don't think spoilers makes it as special or not of when you're consuming something. It's like, or is it just because they're harming someone else and you see it like that? But
no, that's what it is.
They are is harmful.
It's the harm, because like I don't have a problem with all the people in the Otome Isekai community who seek out spoilers.
Yeah,
they're making a choice to do that. They can choose to not click that link, even though it's hard because it's secret information you need to learn. But like
dummies.
A person who specifically goes out and says, I'm going to make someone have a bad time on purpose. I know what I'm doing. Like, deriving joy from other people's pain in a non-consensual way is anti-human.
It's not okay. It's not good. I don't know if I'd say that's. This is what I am striving to make Brad speak like when he reads a manga chapter one day. This is the goal.
Listen,
because I know it's inside of him. Like, we're hearing it right now.
Human beings are inherently social creatures.
Yes,
most human beings need social contact in order to have a healthy life. So, purposefully hurting social constructs, which is what happens
needlessly, without benefit,
you are harming humanity
or gain meaningfully
by being a dick.
By yelling "Snape kills Dumbledore," you
yes,
violated the Geneva Convention.
Now you've okay. Now, I know both of you are being very ends of things, but to defend Brad in this small moment, it is a disrespecting of the social contract of like, be cool, dude.
I don't necessarily think those people should like be in prison, but like,
oh my gosh. Move to Japan. They have other ideas about that.
No, look, I'll agree with you. I mean, they're trolls. It all starts with 4chan. Like, the Snape kills Dumbledore thing was a 4chan, you're the man now, dog.
I don't have that level of burning blood in me about this.
Concentrated troll effort. But like, I think my thing is with spoilers, like, there's two sides of it. There's the more than the person who just wants to like ruin something that they think is stupid. There's also the person who gets a dopamine hit off knowing things other people don't.
Yeah, that's why Brad needs to click those secret knowledge buttons. He has to learn it. He has to know.
Maybe you might be right.
It's fine as long as you're respectful of other people's wishes and you stop when they ask you to stop.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing I've seen too is like, on the flip side, there's like spoiler babies where it's like, I'm having a conversation at a coffee shop with a friend, and like, if you can overhear that we're talking about a show that we watched and you get mad and shout spoilers.
Yeah, that's
I thought you were just going to say like in general, because as I described this before, it's like if there's something I'm excited about, like I'm already clued in, I'm like, okay, I saw what little I needed. I didn't watch the trailer. There's some things, I haven't had this in a while, where it's like any information to me is a spoiler then. And when I go, don't tell me anything, and sometimes people don't understand that any information is a spoiler, it's like, oh, it happens the first 5 minutes. I don't care. That's information. That's a spoiler.
I want to experience the whole thing.
I don't care that that's not a spoiler to you, because that's not how you view spoilers. But to me, any information at all is a spoiler, because it gives, like I said before, it gives me things to finish my thing from earlier. It's like horror movies. I came to them a little bit later in life. I'm not always super in it. Many years ago, I was watching through I think a bunch of the Halloween movies, specifically through all of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. So I go, well, of course he's not freaking dead. I've got DVDs for, X amount more movies. So I finally had my first in movie theater new horror experience, when admittedly we did not know at this time, start of a new Halloween trilogy that came out. I just thought there was one last ride, and then it was done. So at the end of the movie, when Michael Myers wasn't dead, I got surprised, because I assumed this was the last movie, and it wasn't. They made 2 more, and they're garbage. But that's not the point. But
can't ever end series.
But that's the authentic Halloween experience you didn't get to have before.
Well, no, like,
he's not dead, and the sequels are garbage.
Like that. This is like a different flavor of spoiler, where it's less like information. It's the osmosis spoiler, and I guess I'm going to go from that to the one where Brad was kind of talking about, where it's like something so big happens that people are buzzing so loudly about that a community that's normally good on it just breaks free and it is uncontainable, which I guess me talking about this will actually lead us into the third point you wanted to make, which is like Luffy going Gear 5 in One Piece was a thing that I saw everywhere after it happened, and then even more places after it happened in the anime. Like, there's merch for it. I have a friend who is obsessed with it and has merch for this thing that happened earlier this year. Like, it's just this is too incredible and crazy a thing to have happened, especially into this such a long-running series as One Piece. It cannot be contained. It will break the bond. People have to talk about it and make art about it and show it everywhere. Like, there's some times where it's just inescapable, and like, it just is now a thing that is about One Piece. Even if you start One Piece and you won't see it for like years of reading, it's just a thing you vaguely understand as something.
And I think that...
And now that's inescapable. And that's not anybody's fault, and I don't know if it's... The world is a little less magical for it, but it's not like nobody's fault. It's not a problem. Like, I get it. I'm a part of it, you know?
And I think that it's a difficult path to walk. So having a podcast where you are talking about media all the time, you're putting that out into the world.
But we're not the whole internet.
Right.
We're individual people's experience with it. You don't osmosis a podcast. You listen to it and you gain that information. You're not like, man, everybody keeps drawing this big fish guy with this One Piece crew. I wonder what's up with that.
But
so now you just have vague information in the back of your head, like, there's this fish guy that joins the One Piece, the main Luffy's crew, and you just kind of vaguely know that.
But then,
even
when
from
you
the start,
first
when it's
meet
going to
him,
be hundreds of chapters before you meet him.
But then when you first meet him, and then he goes off someplace else, and you're like, wait a minute, isn't he the guy that I saw? What's he doing? Where he's going that way?
But instead of just not thinking about it, you're constantly going. You're like, your brain now has a correct picture of what it's supposed to be, and when it's not, all you can think about is, well, no, the picture's not right. He should be over here instead of what the story's supposed to be doing. You know.
Yeah. But I think there's some important...
It's a different experience.
There's an important thing there, like, as people who are putting content out that people are consuming, where, especially when we talk about very specific media that we've consumed, and we go, like, here's what we experienced, and we're talking about things that happened in it, and to sort of go, is this thing that we're talking about enough of a spoiler for the series that we should either talk around it or specifically say, hey, this is a spoiler that you might want to skip if you haven't experienced it yet?
I mean, I don't think we do that because I think a lot of the times when we're invoking these things, we're trying to make a point about whatever topic we're talking about. We're not just talking about the series as like a linear thing. We're going, hey, this thing happens in this series, which makes the point I'm making. Here's an example of it that's come to mind. Like,
it's something that we have done from time to time, like especially with heroin addiction, where we're sort of talking about a whole series, and it's like, I mean, on the one hand, you sort of have, like, going into that as a listener, you sort of have to be like, they're going to talk about how
talking
this
around
ends.
It would be wasted air.
But at the same time,
outside
you sort
of like a little opener bit.
I think we have a responsibility to let people know ahead of time that we're going to be doing that. And sometimes we don't. And apologies, as indie podcasters, we're not so great at this sometimes.
I mean, I think about even in Shonen Jumping the Gun, where you're not supposed to know anymore, and every so often I go, I can see the future, and it's like, am I already spoiling you? I don't know.
I don't know. I'd say I'd be more conscious of it if, like, we were
complained.
talking about something that people hadn't had a good opportunity to have already noticed and read. Like, if it came out yesterday, I would be very aware of it. As months and years go by, don't click on a podcast that's talking about it if you haven't read it yet. That's kind of my
heroin addiction stuff. Yeah, I think when we just invoke things that we have read or watched.
Heroin addiction lives in a really weird space in my mind, because on the one hand, we are reviewing something that is, been out for a while, but on the other hand, in a lot of cases, I'm saying, I recommend this series. You should go read it.
Sometimes it's not even done being out. That's
right.
the weird thing of,
most
like,
of them.
these things is that because, 95% of what you talk about has been around for a while, but that last 5% of the last few chapters of, like, and that's just the weirdness of talking about something so week by week serialized.
This is where I get into, like, the weirdness with your completionist thing. If I was listening to a podcast to find out if I wanted to read something. When they got to the point where they convinced me, I'd shut it off and go.
That's a
read
good point. Yeah,
I've done that before.
and I wouldn't.
Yeah, you would. Yeah, because you have to complete it.
Exactly.
I'm going to say this phrase. I was going to say it earlier about you describing the Tome Isekai thing, and I've described about you, and I just really want to say it about on the podcast is the descriptor of a glutton who would not be satisfied with all the riches of heaven. I just wanted to make sure that got recorded and put out into the world at some point.
I guess there's a lot of this that comes down to sort of like an individual needs to understand their own relationship with spoilers, and short of the trolls who are purposefully hurting other people, like when you consume something like heroin addiction, or you read something on a review online or whatever, like you need to be aware of what's going on. And if you have an adverse reaction for spoilers, you are responsible for shutting that off. You're responsible for not clicking that spoiler tag.
Are we coming to a tried and true shoot? I want to say our podcast in the acronym form that now that I've learned it. What is it?
Titty grip swap.
Titty grip
swap.
Titty grip swap.
That one's for you, Kilara.
Titty grip swap podcast lesson classic of mindfulness.
Yeah.
Also, don't be an asshole, but I feel like that one's more general than us. But I feel like mindfulness has always been one of our go-tos.
There's one last
Because
piece
it's good.
of this, though.
That's why we keep going to it.
That is sort of outside of mindfulness, and that is the legality of spoilers. And I think Ben has some more information on this.
Yeah.
Okay, so this was just one thing I wanted to touch on because it's funny, and I just don't think a lot of people outside of Japan really get how restrictive Japan is with copyright and everything. So there are people who have been posting there's scans of like One Piece, I think was actually one case. And there were people who posted full reviews of visual novel games, Steins Gate, and full reaction review type stuff of Spy Family. And they wound up getting prosecuted for it and getting pretty severe punishments. I don't think anybody went to prison, but one guy did receive a suspended sentence, which means if he violates the law in any other way, he goes to jail for 2 years. And this isn't something that has been like enshrined into Japanese law, but there's an advocacy group. I think they're called CODA. And they're an advocacy group that specifically pursues claims against people trying to distribute Japanese media on the web and overseas without permission, which is kind of how a lot of us consume a lot of Japanese media.
What are you talking about? No.
I'm just saying, like, they're not on our side here. And
I have a Viz subscription.
Do you, though? Did you? Did you?
I will. I do.
Do you?
I will. I will and I
Honest?
do are two different
Hold on.
things.
Brad, look directly into my eyes. Honest.
Hold on, wait.
We talked about this.
Wait.
I will not
Wait a second.
enable you.
Wait a second.
Where is it? Account, subscription, subscribe.
Are you literally doing it now?
He's literally subscribing right now.
He's completing it. I've asked for him to turn in his homework, and he's completing it in front of my eyes.
Okay. Yeah, I have a Viz subscription. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Sure.
So,
good.
Shonen Jump.
so these people
reactivate.
reactivate. So these people, they are constantly writing press releases when they win a case about what a victory it is. And one thing they keep including is how spoilers damage their clients' ability to make money on their work.
That's bullshit.
If they're saying if you posted the end to Steins Gate on a live play, if you streamed Steins Gate all the way to the end, especially, and you show the ending, why would anyone buy the game? Now, I low-key agree with them on that, though. Because, like, it's a visual novel. There's not a lot of gameplay.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I can see it in that case.
The truest form, the lowest level of hell is reserved for people of the day a game comes out, posting a YouTube video where this big spoiler is in the thumbnail and the name is in the thumbnail, and there's no escaping it. Those people can go to the lowest level of hell. But that's not what's being discussed here, but I just want to make that very clear.
I'm in this weird middle
people
ground.
The lowest level of garbage.
Because, like, I don't think people that are posting a full playthrough of a normal game should be, like, arrested or whatever.
Like a
but
let's play.
Those guys who drove by and said that Snape kills Dumbledore, I'd be okay with them getting arrested. Not necessarily a jail sentence, but, like, you know, the prison sentence.
They were speeding.
Throw them in jail for
Put
3 or 4
them in a drunk tank
days.
for like a day or two.
They have to get up in front of a
it.
judge, and then
Yeah.
they have to, like, write an apology letter or something.
Community service.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
a
I will
library.
say, like, so Game Grumps did the Doki Doki Literature Club playthrough.
Yeah.
Because of that, I'll never play the game. I liked it. I thought it was cool. If nobody had ever posted a full playthrough, I might have bought the game to see what happens. But I didn't because I didn't want to play it. I just wanted to know.
I think that's a rare case, though.
No.
Because think about, like,
How many people watched Markiplier play Five Nights at Freddy's games instead of buying them? I was one of them. I didn't buy any. I think I bought one of them. Because I watched him play, I never bought any of them.
I guess
there is a number of games that I would have bought, but because I had an easy access to be able to see them, I did not buy them.
I suppose I'm not qualified to speak on this specific part of this because I didn't watch the videos and I wasn't going to buy the game. But
Yeah.
I think about it in terms of, like, all those people standing in line to buy the Harry Potter book. Did any of them leave the line?
No, but their days were ruined.
Yeah. But
Now that is
no one
hovering in their
lost
head
it.
as they read.
No one lost a sale because those people spoiled that book.
No.
J.K. Rowling still has her castle.
Yeah.
But no, I don't know. There's something to that, I thought, because I have done that. Like, if somebody had just given me a review of Doki Doki Literature Club, said it was a spooky game, I might have done it. I might have.
I mean, it's the toss up of the let's play of people have seen it, now they're not going to play it and buy it, and people saw a thing more than they would have otherwise and are now interested and went to buy it. Like, there's stories in both directions, which is why it's a lot of, like, gray area.
Well, the flip,
a lot of
the flip
shrugging
side
and
is
going.
I never would have known what it was if I
I'd
hadn't
like to
seen that.
see. Yeah, I'd like to see actual, like, numbers if it was possible to do a study on that.
You can't, though, because how
Yeah.
do you know what a not purchase is?
But that's the kind
track
of
that.
I mean, I have a very similar feeling about piracy, where it's like, you know, a lot of the
It's billions
media
of
companies,
lost sales. But
right? They're
nobody
like,
would have bought it.
we're losing all this money because of piracy, and it's like those people weren't going to buy that in the first place. You know, there's a very small group of people who would have purchased it, but because they could pirate it, they're not going to. And I think my feeling, and I don't have any evidence to back this up, and Ben, you might be right, but, like, my feeling is that the amount of people who aren't going to purchase a thing because they saw the spoiler on a Let's Play or whatever is a very small group.
I don't know if that's
Well-
true. I don't think that's to both your points that we can't track that. I can genuinely never say, because I've been both of those people. I've been somebody who saw something and said, I was going to buy this game, but now I'm not going to. And, oh, I didn't know about this. I'm going to buy this now. Like, I've been unintentionally advertised, and I had unintentionally driven away. And that's why it's a big, complicated thing. And I don't think the law is ready to deal with it.
Maybe you purchased that thing because you didn't see spoilers, and then you get into it and you're like, nope,
Yeah.
returned.
There's a certain genre of game that is more vulnerable to it for me.
Sure. Yeah.
than
I can
Visual
definitely
novel where
agree
there's
with
not
that.
like choice or gameplay,
Right.
then yeah.
What are you
But-
talking? Visual novels have choice in them.
But the other thing I was going to say, though, is like this. So they consider it posting spoilers if you access it. So what I'm saying is they talk about spoilers, but, like, that was more than spoilers. And posting scans is more than spoilers. It's not that we know what happens and now we're not going to support the official release. It's they just distributed it where
Well,
maybe it wasn't.
That's
yeah.
piracy.
but the anime anime manga outside of Japan has a weird relationship with piracy because I would say without scanlators and fan subbers, there is no anime outside of Japan.
I will
Not as big as it is
always
now.
I will always fall on the side of if you can purchase it legally, that's what you should do. You shouldn't just read stuff or watch stuff on, whatever shady website or even not shady ones that have it.
Too late.
If there is an official release of it. And
even if it's locked
generally-
behind a complicated system of keys.
Gotta hold your guns, Brad.
Yes. Yes.
Did you read Skip and Loafer on Manga Dex?
Isn't that on?
Is it on one?
Where is
I read
that?
it on Manga Dex, but I'm a garbage now because I did not know it was officially released.
What's Manga Dex?
What's that? I don't know. Whose footprints are these?
Just because sometimes I'm hypocritical doesn't mean I'm wrong.
This is what happens when we're all socially available people to be gawked at.
No, I always want to support authors except for J.K. Rowling. So yeah, there's no point. I can't defend anything that I'm doing that is wrong, and I will freely admit that sometimes I do it wrong.
Yeah.
But I just purchased a Viz subscription on air, so I think I'm in a pretty
I think that
good
absolves
spot.
me of all sins. No, I think your difficulty and our difficulty with it speaks to the complicated and very personal and gray nature of all of this. I
Yeah.
do not think more than anything we've talked about, I think we all feel very different things about different times and things.
Well, I mean, I'll bite the bullet. Like when you're talking
Right.
about the lost sale thing is like, yeah, if I have to engage with that system of keys, I just don't read manhwa. So
Yep.
that is the
Yes, that's how it works.
choice. Like scanlators, scanlators are the only reason anyone would ever buy those keys. I think you gotta it's like a drug dealer. The first one's gotta be free.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of
So
it
they're called keys.
where you get the scanlation first, and then it becomes an officially licensed series, and then you go get it on the official site. I mean, lots and lots of people consume it that way, and frankly, that's the way that you should do it. As soon as it's legally available, you should get it the legal way.
Sometimes I don't want to give a company money. Have you
Sell
thought
me
about that?
sell me a villainous turns the hourglass T-shirt.
Sometimes Netflix pisses in my
I'll buy
cornflakes,
merch.
and I'm very pissed about it.
I
stop giving them money.
think
But I still really want to watch things on them.
I think if you don't want to give the company money, you're not supposed to consume that thing.
I know I've said that to you multiple times before, but also fuck past me. Please.
Also, I'm a rebel, man. live on
Sometimes
the
there's
dark
a bunch
side.
of new animation, even after they killed a bunch of it, that just shows up on the platform and everybody's talking about it and I want to watch it.
Unfortunately, I don't think we have a good
Outro for this.
a good sort of moral for this because
It's complicated.
it's
I
way
feel like
too
it's interesting. I don't think we've ever had something where we've ended so just all over the place about them,
yeah,
which I think is interesting. I like that. That's new.
because I mean, I will say,
What do you think about spoilers?
I think
Viewer,
the way,
listener,
I think the
accosting
way
you?
that the Otome Isekai community goes about spoilers is the correct way, even though we're all a glutton for punishment and seek out those spoilers.
Okay, wait. I know we've already gone over time on this segment, but I do want to the true special case of all anime and manga. We come back to JoJo. JoJo, a series I've told multiple people have told me is the unspoilable series because you can be told all the insane stuff happens and
Yeah.
either you won't believe it, you won't remember it, or it'll happen in a context in a way that you will never be prepared for,
Yeah.
or how you picture it in your head.
You'd literally
and also
have to
there's just
see
too
it.
many things. If somebody's telling you what happened, there is a bunch of things they forgot because there's just so much bullshit popping up all the time. And that's JoJo for you. Still great, despite the madness, but I don't know if there's any other series besides JoJo that's like that.
So, come on our Discord and
Spoiler things to us.
don't spoil anything on the Discord or I'll ban you. I have that power.
We have that power to police our own little garden.
No, you can spoil stuff. In case you don't know, Discord has a very specific feature where you can put a spoiler tag around something.
I don't know how to do that.
You just highlight it, and then the little thing pops up, and there's a little
There's
eye
like a
icon.
eyeball.
I
Yeah.
have to do that then. I'll put a spoilered message in there.
Also, I think it's just two
That says no
vertical
spoilers.
bars on either side.
Oh, okay. That's a lot easier.
So, yeah.
ブランのスポンサーでお送りします。
Are you a fan of Japanese snacks and treats?
I am.
That's good. You'll love Sugoi Mart. They offer a wide variety of popular Japanese snacks, candy, drinks, and more, all delivered right to your door.
Wow.
And I'll tell you what, listening to this episode right after it's released, in the week or two after it's released, now is the perfect time to use our offer code and pick something up because the holidays are here. You
Buy something for that weeb in your life.
Exactly. Go on Sugoi Mart, order 14 Kit Kat variety packs, and give them to every weeb in your life.
Feed an unsuspecting non-weeb Pocky and convert them in some sort of weird, gross ritual.
It's a really, I mean, you save 15% off with our offer code APR15
You know how much
or
money that
using
is?
the
A
link
lot.
in the description. And so you can just go on there. You can buy all of the presents for every single weeb in your life all at once and save a ton of money. I mean, what's not to like?
It's free real estate.
And you should go on there, get the Kit Kat variety pack, send it to Ben, and then
That's
he'll
right.
do whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what I can do for you, but I'm open to suggestions.
So, like I said, as a listener of our podcast, you can click the link in the description or use the code APR15 at checkout and get 15% off your first purchase. And just head to sugoimart.com to shop their selection of delicious Japanese snacks today.
Thanks, Sugoi Mart.
So, almost a year ago, I got some Christmas presents for you guys. And one of those things
You did.
was the first volume of Vinland Saga for Ben.
You actually got me the first two.
What was it, the first two? I'm so generous.
Noted Viking lover in our life.
So I wanted to finally talk about this. I've been wanting to talk about it for a while. We started watching the anime. We aren't fully through the first season, but we got a fair way through. Other series, unfortunately, took precedent, but it's sitting there waiting for us to get back to
I want
it.
to get back to it so bad.
And we've been having a really good time with it. So I wanted to talk to Ben about his experience with the first two volumes and also sort of talk a little bit about the anime. And personally, I'm interested to hear if there's any differences. But it's a series that I have some very interesting feelings about because at least in the first part of the anime, the main character is, for most of it, is a teenager, and he's so goddamn edgy. But
Crack yourself on him.
as we're watching this, I'm thinking like, I don't hate this. He's not unrealistically edgy like we see in a lot of other series.
But he also does not emit an edgelord field. It is just he individually is an edgelord. The
Yeah.
show does not agree with him necessarily.
Yeah.
And you can feel that, and that's why he's interesting and not frustrating.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
that he is not frustrating at times, but not for the normal
He definitely
edgelord reasons.
he can be.
Yes.
But it's, he has a good reason, even if he's sort of a dumb teenager.
yes.
But like, I don't feel like it's unrealistic. Now, I think Sasuke has a good reason to be an edgelord, but also,
But he sucks.
yeah, I'm not actually sure what the difference is.
I think the show shows that Sasuke is cool, and the show shows that Thorfinn is not necessarily cool.
Yeah, I wonder.
So, yeah, I mean, so the reason you got this for me, I don't know if anybody listens to the podcast, I don't know how often I've talked about it, but like I guess there's two weirdly specific set of interests I have. Like, I like to study Japanese, and I'm also really into Old Norse, Old English, and High German.
And horror. That's important.
And horror, that's another one.
You got-
I guess
there's
that doesn't
three.
really come into play in Vinland Saga though.
No.
Came into
But-
play in our
Oh,
last
as far
episode.
as like
Yeah.
these two things that you're
Oh,
into
yeah.
have come
Oh,
together
yes.
to form a chimera of weirdness.
The two things like I hardly ever get to talk about together because like they never come up together except for like Tolkien every now and then.
Yeah.
So I've read the Poetic Edda many times, which is like all the Viking stories about the gods, and some of them are about heroes. I've read Vinland Saga. I've read the Saga of the Volsungs, so many sagas. There's a lot of them actually. The Vikings write a lot about that stuff. They have some of like part of the reason I'm into the language is because they have some of the best stuff to read of all like the old languages. And so I was always really interested in what Japan would do with the Viking age, because it's really easy to fuck up. Like, like a lot of Western stuff does not get it right at all about what the Vikings did, about who they were. Like, not every Norse.
Those were
person
those
was a
guys with the
Viking.
horns on their helmets, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And the boats.
Oh, the English. They demonized the poor Danes. But I was talking to a friend of mine who he also was in a weird spot of like he studied German and he studied Japanese. And he has gotten out of
Shout out to
manga.
Cake Dwarf.
It's not him.
Not Cake Tour.
No, I know it's not, but no, shout.
It's a German speaker.
Yes. But so I was talking to my friend and I was telling him he's been out of manga for a while. He was like, "Oh, what's good these days?" And I was telling him like, "Have you ever heard of Vinland Saga?" And he's like, "Yeah, I looked at it." And I was like, the best way I can think to recommend this to somebody who might be more into Vikings than anime is like, there's not a lot of anime bullshit.
Yeah. No, and that's it's really interesting the way that they seem to portray everything in a fairly realistic manner as far as like who the Vikings actually were. It's not romanticized like a lot of places do it.
There's only one character that I can think of that emits an anime aura field, but that's about it.
Which one?
Well,
What's
big
his name?
guy.
The big guy that throws
Thorkel.
entire tree. Yeah,
Thorkel,
Thorkel.
yeah.
Like he is that's why I love him, because he just exudes anime bullshit.
now the thing is, like, I was telling my friend about it and I said, like, the fights are obviously overhyped. Like, there's a guy jumping from ship to ship, killing people in the opening scene, and there's Thorkel throwing whole trees across the battlefield.
Yeah, the people at the very top of the power scale are basically superhuman, but everyone else is portrayed very realistically.
A human.
But I'm
Maybe
going
they
to
are
throw
touched
this
by
out.
the gods. They have the name Thor in all their names.
I'm going to throw this out there. Like, in the sagas, that's not that far off base.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's also these grandiose stories. Like, if you read, I know Beowulf isn't Norse, it's Old English, but like Beowulf, he swims down for 2 days to get to Grendel's lair. Like, he just doesn't breathe air for 2 days. I mean, the sagas and all the old stories are like filled with these like great feats of strength that are obviously like, maybe there's a grain of truth in there somewhere. Like, maybe he lifted a big rock, but it very quickly becomes a mountain.
Yeah.
And so, like, the history's good. They portray early Christians pretty well. Like, so the story of Vinland Saga takes place around like the year like 1000 to like 1100.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And so that's about the time Europe is being Christianized. And Christianity has not quite reached Scandinavia yet. It's just starting. And that is about the time all of the Old Norse literature starts to get recorded, because it's the monks that write most of it down. Like, most of Old Norse is written in the Latin alphabet. It's not written in runes, which is like, I get the distinct impression that this author read all of the source material. He read the history and he read the sagas, and it feels like a Norse saga as an anime.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that's a little different is it doesn't have a Norse morality. It does a little bit, but it's playing with the idea of like, he's not one of these heroes from the sagas, because they all die tragically. But that's the point, is like there's a Norse, like, I heard one guy call it positive fatalism, like optimistic fatalism, where you're gonna die on the day you're supposed to die. That's what the Norse believed. And the only choice you have is, do you meet it like a hero or a coward?
Mm.
So you should never hesitate to go into battle, because if that's your day to die, if you don't die in battle, maybe you'll have a heart attack. Like, doesn't matter. So you might as well ride out. And they capture a lot of that, but also they capture people getting tired of the battle, and like ultimately sort of why these old ways fell out in favor of Christianity. And he deals with the complexity as well. Like, I'm surprised, because the Vikings are not good or bad. They're just people with, like, they're pirates. They're
I would argue
to
that
make
they're
money.
bad in that way.
Depends who you are. If you're the Danes, then yeah, you know.
Well, it depends if you're the village trying to farm in an area that has 3 months of sunlight, who desperately needs a ship to come back with supplies. That's why they raid, not because they love it, but because...
But the village that the Vikings need to take home and over the winter, that they essentially slaughter everybody, maybe not so great.
I would argue maybe don't live someplace that only has 3 months of sunlight.
I thought you were going to say don't live where the Vikings go. Maybe you should just... Why don't we take the village and move it somewhere else?
Take the village and push it out of that spot.
Maybe we should go to Vinland.
But yeah, like I'd compare it to, like, there's a lot of the same reasons I think people might have been drawn to Eren Yeager from Attack on Titan initially. Like this brutalized character who has all this righteous anger and takes it out. Now, the problem I have with Attack on Titan is he never stops taking it out on people, even when, like, he's sort of becoming the fascist bad guy. And the show's not super critical of that. But Vinland Saga is critical of that. Like, this life that Thorfinn's leading is not making him happy. He doesn't look cool doing it. I think that's the main thing, is like, he's an edgelord, but he's not just getting sexier with time.
He looks like he's having a rough go of things.
Yeah, he looks
does look cool sometimes, though.
Occasionally he will look really cool when he does a crazy thing, but by and large he looks very down all the time.
He is miserable, and the whole seed is planted that he's eventually going to come around to his father's way of thinking, where his father became like a pacifist almost.
Yeah.
After having been the biggest badass there was. So he's not a coward. That's important. You needed to establish, like, no, he's a badass.
This is a choice. This is not just by happenstance that I choose not to fight because I can't fight. I am the most fight. I choose to not fight.
Yeah.
I think that's more interesting.
That. No, I think that's really interesting. And that's something that's not in a lot of the sagas. That's an interesting, like, new take on it. It's not just retelling a saga. And it also mixes in the whole... the Norse were the first Europeans to make it to North America.
Yeah. Happy Leif Erikson Day.
Yeah, it definitely exists in a time period of sort of a shift in the way of thinking, which I think, you touched on there with this, introduction of Christianity, which not necessarily a good thing, but the idea of being good to other people and not necessarily sort of just this constant survival mechanism that
Christianity gets a bad rap for good reason, but there is something about like when it comes in, human life at least gets some more baseline value. Like there's a reason people converted. And it's because you've got one way of life that really emphasizes strength and survival of the fittest. And then you've got this Jesus coming in saying the meek will inherit the earth, the first shall be last. And that's attractive to a lot of the villagers who are who are the meek. And also they write everything down. And many of them are coming from Rome, which seemed like basically space civilization to the Vikings.
So what do we want to say? I mean, overall, I want to recommend the series.
Yeah, I mean, we need to finish it to be able to speak more fully of it, but everything I've seen so far.
And it got a second season. I think the second season's over already.
Yeah, I feel like I see it regularly in bookstores.
It's been fairly popular. And, I mean, overall, I want to tell everybody listening to this, it's popular for a good reason. It's a good series. I had some difficulty with it from a sensitivity to things standpoint, as far as like things that sort of trigger me, because there is a lot of depiction of very wanton violence against innocents,
women and children especially. I mean, it doesn't shy away from the dark underbelly of what it means.
It also does not revel in it, because I could think of other series, especially if that edgelord vibe was throughout all of it, that like I would never call it a mean show. It is a very stark show at times.
It doesn't glorify the violence, but also the people committing the violence don't really get a comebacks, at least not anytime soon. But they're not getting a direct comeuppance for that thing that they did wrong.
But I think
there's not heroes that are coming in and saving the day. Yeah. So
it's kind of a thing like, I don't know. I think Dan Carlin was the one who said this, and I'm like paraphrasing from his book. But like, imagine how humanity was for most of human history, like what we now consider trauma and abuse, and how we think of people who are raised in like traumatic and abusive situations can often like turn out. Mm-hmm. And now imagine that for like all of human history, everyone you knew, every single person was raised in that psychologically traumatizing environment. Yeah. And that's kind of where it's a cycle, and they show it being a cycle, and they're really trying to break it.
It's really no wonder that humanity took so long to become so technologically advanced, because everybody throughout history has been so traumatized the whole time.
Yeah.
But yeah, to that specific point, I still enjoyed it. While there were certain parts where, you know, I sort of like got cringed up, you know, like they never spent too long on it or glorified it or anything.
Yeah, they usually like, just as you're like, okay guys, they generally moved on, but you felt a little uncomfortable, but I think that's the point. But like I said, they never glorify it. I don't think they ever like, look at it moment. It's just like, this is what's happening. We're moving through this. This is how the Vikings operated and people in this situation operated. It's not great. We're not, like you said, we're not glorifying it.
And
we're not necessarily fully vilifying it. It's just,
I think
here we are.
I think that experience that I had with it is an indication of its strength, because I still enjoyed the overall experience, even though I was uncomfortable at points.
Yes.
I think there is a very compelling story there, and sort of the reality of what happened in that time period. And it's a great exploration of that, and sort of an experience of those times. It's really amazing just how accurate it feels. I can't speak to how accurate it is.
You can't speak to neither the two of us. Ben can maybe a little bit more to the accuracy.
I mean, it feels
historical
authentic.
Fiction. Yeah, it feels authentic as much as it's going to be.
But the fact that you can get into something like that and believe it is a very important part of storytelling, and it has done that excellently.
It has a sense of boots on the ground soldiering that I appreciate. That
Yeah.
reminds me of like the bits that I read from Berserk, and then Berserk's doing a lot of other things, but I like that it's just like, this is a war band. This is the dealings you have to do to just operate them and move them around, and the combat that happens, and feeding them, and tactics and all that. Like I love that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think my biggest pitch, I don't know. I mean, obviously it's really popular with anime fans. I see stuff from it everywhere. And it's a really well animated and well drawn manga. Well animated anime, well drawn manga. I think that helps. That's probably the thing a lot of people gravitate towards, is it looks cool and it has a decent story. But I think this one has a potential to appeal to like the heroic fantasy fan outside of anime and manga.
I was gonna say, I think this is one you can suggest to non-weebs.
Did we check out the English dub? I forget.
I don't think we did.
Well,
they don't need that if they want to read it.
Thorkel is Dimple, so you should definitely do the Japanese version.
Yes.
It's weird. It's weird hearing them talk about the stuff they talk about in Japanese.
Yeah, you see all these like blonde hair, blue eyed people speaking Japanese.
Japanese are going like, I don't understand this other person speaking English, old English.
Oh, that's always funny when they're both speaking Japanese, and they're like, we don't understand them. You're speaking the same. No.
It's like, I get it. I
suspension
understand.
of disbelief.
There's just something silly about that when it's like, we're describing two other languages and I'm speaking a third language that none of these characters would ever learn.
So I'll tell you this. I don't know. I don't know how true it is, but I get the vibe that the people involved in making it made an effort to really understand the culture. Because, like,
I would say so.
Thor, the TH is one of the hardest sounds for a non-native English speaker to pronounce, especially in Japan. And I've heard some of the voice actors hitting it. Because every other person is named Thorkel, Thorfinn.
Thor.
And they do
Thor,
say
Thor.
like Thorfinn.
Yeah.
But that's close. I mean, it's
Close
obviously
enough to be impressive.
it's not Thorfinn.
Yeah, true, true. Gatsu.
But I feel like they're really trying. And it doesn't.
The only part that ever took me out of this set and setting was when they would go, I can't understand what they're saying while they're speaking the same
They're both
language.
speaking Japanese. Yeah. I know I've seen that in English stuff too.
But that, you just gloss over that. And,
I didn't know you spoke Welsh. Hi.
Domo.
Yeah, and then it's like, let me switch my language, and they continue to speak Japanese as they've been speaking.
Oh,
it.
yeah,
It's
when
like,
they come across
Hanashimasu.
those one guys in the was it Welsh? It might have been Welsh.
might have been Welsh.
Where they're marching through there, and they're like, "Hold on, I speak Welsh. Hi, how's it going?" Like, what?
Watashi wa Welsh te.
Hold on. I speak Welsh. Konnichiwa.
Konnichiwa.
But yeah, I think overall we can. It's a very recommendable series.
Yes. I recommend we continue watching it at some point in the future.
Yeah, if it weren't for the Jujutsu Kaisens and Spy Families, we'd have finished it already.
Yeah.
It's really good. I really like the OP. The music is pretty good, and
It's been neat.
the OP in the first season was real nice.
Did we reach the
Survive?
second OP,
I think we
didn't
did.
we?
Yeah.
Survive Said the Prophet is a band I have been listening to like before I ever knew they did anime openings. They're just a solid like screamo band.
And we've seen very recently that music is very important.
And fit or not fit. Yes. Yes.
So, well, I guess there you have it. Any closing thoughts on Vinland Saga?
No, highly recommend to myself to get back to it. Good time.
I really liked the part where Thorfinn was dueling the guy, and then the rap came on and was like, "Yo, Thorfinn, knock out his teeth." Yo.
Anyway, come join us on the Discord and talk about Vinland Saga.
Yeah. Yell at us to keep watching it.
Listen, I see the numbers, I see the downloads, and we don't have enough people on the Discord yet. So, but everybody that is on the Discord is
You got to be cool to get on the Discord, though.
Appreciative. Everybody's having great conversations on there.
They're all cool.
So come join us.
So join if you're cool.
You can join if you're not cool.
No.
You just have to stay in a very specific area.
You can talk to me about Japanese ska music.
That means they'd be cool, though.
Nobody likes it. I keep posting it and everybody's like, "Oh, that's good," but like it's not my thing.
It's not Ben, as someone who likes ska, it's fine. It's not I don't know what it's missing, but it's not hitting that itch.
See? So if you're not cool, come and talk to me about ska.
If you're cool, come and talk to me about ska. If you're not cool, come and talk to Ben about Japanese ska. A thing that I was very excited to learn existed and listen to, and was just like, it doesn't make me want to pick it up. I don't want to start skanking when I hear it, and I think I don't know why, but it's missing something.
They told me to pick it up, but I put it down.
Well, thanks for listening to That Time I Got Reincarnated in the Same World as an Anime Podcaster. To find all our social media links, such as our Discord, Twitter, Threads, Patreon, Facebook, and more, visit our website, animepodcasterreincarnation.com. You can also find articles on various topics, as well as new manga reviews. We'd love to hear from you on any of those social platforms, or you can just leave a comment on the site. You can also just send an email to isekaisensei-sama@gmail.com. We're always looking for feedback, and we'd love to chat with you about the topics that we cover. If you prefer to listen to the podcast in high-quality stereo, be sure to check out our YouTube channel, where we simul-release all of the episodes. We also release that version early on Patreon, so if you just can't wait, you can join us there and listen as soon as the episode's ready. In addition to getting the episodes early, all tiers get to vote on the next series we cover on heroin addiction, as well as getting a shout-out. Merchant tier and up have access to the collection of music from all our podcast series, access to exclusive channels on our Discord, and customized Patreon shoutouts. And we want to know what Patreon perks you want. Yes, you, listening to this right now. It's really easy to bribe me. So we want to thank all our patrons at our reincarnator level. I'm gonna try this. I hope you appreciate this. Danke für deine Unterstützung, Cake Dwarf. I hope I got that right. Cake Dwarf, shout out.
Shout out to Cake Dwarf.
And also at our reincarnator level, shout out to Moon, who is a moderator over on the r/Otome Isekai subreddit and a friend of the show. And at our merchant tier, we have Kill Hour.
Kill Hour.
And
my favorite.
Last but very definitely not least, at our commoner tier, we've got our good friend Rena.
Thank you, Rena. And thank you, Moon. I don't think I said that as well.
And before we go, I want to remind you that you can check out Sugoi Mart, where you can get 15% off your first order by using the link in the description or using the code APR15 at checkout. Ben, what do you guys got going on with Words About Books?
Oh, it's the November of our discontent. And we try to find books that are going to like just sort of like bring everything down. And
your moods,
I think we're doing
numbers.
We're doing a good job. We're reading a book soon about a time-traveling Prince Harry fighting a cyborg Joseph Stalin. It is not a comedy.
That sounds awesome, though.
Oh.
Also, the last episode I listened to was about a Halo book, and you actually liked it.
Yeah, but I didn't like that I liked it.
You just have to read it and pretend it's not Halo, right?
That's what I did to get through it. No, it's fun. I think it's fun for everybody else.
I enjoyed that episode. And Kermit.
You can find me on this very podcast feed on my slightly less new show, Shonen Jumping the Gun. We will read the first chapter of a manga currently in Shonen Jump. We're trying to hit the newest stuff first and make long-ranging guesses and judgments on it from only one chapter. So come check that out. I'm very happy with what we've done so far, and we've got more coming to you.
And I believe very recently you've decided on a goal for the series.
A secret goal that may be a spinoff that I call, what is it, Manga Science Theater 3000, is to find a manga first chapter that is so terrible, that is so vile, that Brad will actually say he does not like it. But outside of that, it is generally a popping in of all these series. Just I'm literally going chronologically backwards in Shonen Jump, and we're keeping up with any new stuff. To, see how we feel about these things from only this little tasty sliver of getting started.
So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that. That Shonen Jumping the Gun comes out every other week.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again for listening. And in the off chance that you get to travel between the real world and a story, keep the spoilers to yourself.
I hate it when we get to the end and we're like, wait a minute, a new big thought. And I'm like, I want to talk about this, but we can't. It's no time. Maybe in another year we'll come back. Some new angle.
Cadre.
Maybe I will submit that villains one again. They accepted it last year, and I'm just
You
throwing
can
dogs
edit
at the
out
wall
your
and see what sticks.
edit out your and put in cadre.
Yes, perfect. Wait, let's get it. Wait, I want to get a clean take of cadre. Okay, everybody quiet? Okay.
Cadre. It's a good word.
It's a good word. I'm not against the word. You know me. I literally told you. Gang, posse, cabal, cadre. I'll add it to it.
No, I think rogues gallery
Squad.
is like an industry term.
What? Yeah, Rogues Gallery.
Rogues
That's
Gallery
why I wanted it, because I knew
Yeah.
it was a specific term that I wanted.
I know I have
Rogues
definitely
cadre.
heard cadre of
Batty
villains
cadre.
before, so.
Assholes.
That's not what I said.
I know it's not what you said. It's close enough. I didn't even bring up freaking wrestling heels. That's what makes Dio fun. That's what makes MJF so hateable. Yeah. What was that?
You can say that. No, that's fine.
No, okay.
That's the level of
Was the
politics that we're at in this podcast.
Yeah. No, I don't.
Hey, you wrote a good series, but everything else about you sucks.
I don't like using that as an insult to actual people. I'd rather say
She's
something
not an
like
actual person.
garbage, trash. I'll say that.
Rich people aren't real people.
No, I just generally. Well, okay, no. I guess this is all getting cut. I generally don't like using that as an actual insult to women. I don't like.
Okay, yeah,
I
that's
like
fine.
saying the word bitch, but I don't like actually non-joke using it as an insult. I think it's
Pretty
really icky
sure
and cheap.
she's not an actual human being.
Then I will call her trash. Turf. Also turf. That works too. So Ben, we were watching Roboco and me, and the bit is that she needed to become more beautiful, so to become this, she became a knee and wanted to absorb all the other maid robots so they could all become a knee.
The knee of the world.
The knee of the world. It was the wildest shit. He turned into a knee. He was Knee Rick.
It's the funniest shit I've ever seen.
It was the funniest shit I've ever seen, though, man. I was cackling so loudly.
Gochi Gorilla, I turned myself into a knee.
I'm Knee Roboco.
So those are nice little shorter
A
bits.
small but mighty package.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
How dare you giggle? I know after I said it wasn't good, but then you giggle and I'm like, it wasn't good.
It's not the size of the package; it's how.
Yep,
you
it's about how it's delivered.
Short but powerful.
Well edited. It will be better edited next time because I'll write the summaries beforehand, so they'll be tighter.